Hey everyone, welcome to week 3 of our interview section. How to ace your interview part 3. So today we're going to be talking about just one method, how to answer interview questions. How to answer interview questions. And we're going to be talking about the best approach, one approach, and that's the best approach you can use to answer interview questions, especially when it's a behavioral interview questions. A lot of the questions that they will ask you, especially for a competency-based interview, they are behavioral questions. They are questions like, tell me a time that you have done this. Tell me a time that you have demonstrated this. Tell me a time that you've worked excellently within a team. So it's all about tell me, because what? They're trying to assess your current behavior. The STAR method is a structured way of answering interview questions. So it helps you to structure your answers. It helps you to, instead of rambling and missing the points, it presents your answer in a logical and organized way. So what does STAR stands for? It stands for situation, task, action, and result. Situation, task, action, result. And some people will call it SAR, situation, action, result. It means that they mention their task in the situation. So it stands for S stands for situation, T stands for task, A stands for action, and R stands for result. So the STAR approach helps you to turn your confidence into clarity. It also helps you to turn your evidence, your experience into evidence, and it helps you to turn your skills into results. So don't forget, STAR approach is the best way to answer interview questions. What is situation? Situation is about setting the context. What project you worked on, what was happening, what organization you worked for, what was the challenge. So it's all about the situation. What was the challenge? What was the situation? What was the context? The setting the context. And it's always good to set your context brief and simple. You don't need a long story. Remember, the whole essence of using the STAR approach is to keep your answer concise and at the same time meaningful. So keep it brief, 1 to 3 sentences or 2 to 3 sentences is okay. For example, in my previous role as a software engineer, our system experienced downtime, and I was the system engineer assigned to fix the service. Okay. Or in my previous role, I was in my previous role as a project manager. The project I worked on is improving system upgrade for our ERP system. So keep it brief and concise. So once you set the situation, you set the context, you want to tell us about the task. What were you asked to do? What was your role? So you can say, for example, I was responsible for identifying the root cause and ensuring system stability. That was your role. You were responsible for what? Identifying the root cause and ensuring system stability. I was responsible for managing the end-to-end improvement process of a particular system. I'm just forming something there. So what was your role? I was the project manager. Yeah. But tell us, what is the expected role? What were you expected to do as a project manager? So after you said your task, that's what you were given to do, you want to go to action. So what did you do? What did you do? People may not even hear what you said, what was the content, what was the situation. They may not even hear what your task was, but they want to know about your action. What did you do? So what did you do? What steps did you take? What skills did you use? What leadership did you show? What decisions were made? Okay. So they're looking for how you contribute value, because remember, this type of question is judging your past behavior to predict your future behavior. It's judging what you've done before, how you're going to behave in the organization, what values you're bringing, what you're going to do. So make sure that you're intentional about saying your actions. I analyzed system logs, coordinated with DevOps, implemented performance monitoring tools. Tell them what you've done I work with a group of stakeholders to achieve this, and avoid saying we did this, we did that. It has to be you, what you did, what I did this, I did this. I remember, like I said, use action verbs. I managed, I developed, encouraged, action verbs, and make sure that your actions is in the past, because we're not talking about what you're doing now. We're talking about what you've done before. Tell me a time that you did this. So it's in the past. So you must speak in past tense. I managed, I developed, I coordinated. So, and avoid saying we. Focus on your own contribution, because you're the one that has been interviewed. And also, result. R stands for result. So what happened in the end? So you've told us about the contest, you've told us about the task that you were given, you've told us about what you did. A lot of times people pause and stop at what they did without telling us about the result. So the importance of the STAR technique is to ensure that you don't forget the most important parts of STAR, which is results. A lot of organizations want people that brings value. And this is where you can communicate value. So you've done all of that. So what was the result? So what happened in the end? And you want to say your results in a way that it shows impact. You want to quantify your results. You want to talk about the values that you contributed in numbers. So, for example, you can say that, oh, yeah, system downtime reduced by 40% and customer complaint dropped significantly. Imagine if you had said, yes, I was able to reduce system downtime, and you stopped. Yes, you said your result, but you haven't really communicated value in a way that is impactful. So you want to quantify it. System downtime reduced by 40%, customer complaints reduced significantly. Numbers make your answers stronger. So you want to communicate value in a way that people can easily remember. 40%, 60%. So whatever you're doing now, find a way to quantify the impact. Find a way to put some numbers in the values that you already have. So, STAR approach, remember, answer your questions with STAR approach. So, why STAR approach? It helps us to keep our answers structured, especially during interview. People are nervous. It may not come easy like that, just for you to remember everything you plan to say. But remember, STAR approach will help you keep your answers structured, and it prevents you from rambling and rambling. And also, it helps you to show impacts. It helps you to show impact, to demonstrate ownership, because you're saying, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. So it helps you to demonstrate ownership, and it makes you to sound confident. Because when you speak in a structured and logical way, people think that you're reasonable. People think that you know what you're doing. You're speaking with confidence and clarity, and everybody's impressed by what you're saying. So it makes you sound confident. Remember how to answer interview questions, especially behavioral competency-based questions. The best approach is to use the STAR approach, or if you want to keep it simple, the SAR approach, SAR. That means when you're talking about the situation, you're also including the task that you have done. For example, if your situation is, I, in my previous role as a software engineer, our system experienced frequent downtime after a new release. And then you want to include your tasks by saying, I was responsible for identifying the root cause and ensuring that system was stable. So you said your situation and your task together. And then you want to be intentional to call out your action. So I was responsible for identifying this. And then you begin to say, so I did this, I managed this. So you're telling us how you did it and what you did. That's your action. And you're telling us about the result of your action. So after I've done all of this is the result. And you're able to quantify it, you're able to demonstrate value and show impacts. That approach proves your confidence with evidence. It forces you to give proof of what you've done, even though you may not be intentional. not to want to say what you've done, but star approach will force you by saying the situation, the task, the action, and the result. It forces you to say, to give evidence to what you're saying, and it shows that you're not just making claims, but you have something to actually show to demonstrate that you've actually done all that. So, star approach will force you to bring evidence, which is good.